Welcome to the Kingsford Flivver Flash. I'm Coach Van Dusen. This is Season 20, Episode 19. Hey Ma, where's my jersey? So welcome back. Thanks for watching. If you're on YouTube or if you're listening on any of your pod-catching choices, I ask that you go to YouTube and you can watch us, hit that subscribe button and mash that notification bell so you always know when we are publishing these. It's been pretty consistent since March when we went to the every 2 a week, and we will go back to once a week kind of once the season starts and we have more to talk about. But this episode is really cool. I've had this in my head as an idea for a while, and I was finally able to make it happen. I have two football moms on because moms just have a different perspective of football, especially watching their boy out there playing football. So I have Tricia Meneguzzo, who has a son who is going to be a junior this year, and then I have Rachael Johnson, who is going to have a senior, a junior, and a freshman all playing Flivver football this year. So they've all been experienced on the road, traveling with the Flivvers, and obviously at home, and they just bring a new perspective to the game of football, a perspective that maybe we don't always see as coaches, maybe a perspective we don't always see as players. So really grateful to have these two nice ladies on the show. All right, well, Tricia and Rachael, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Glad to be here.
All right, I just want you to introduce yourself to the audience. Rachael, we'll start with you. Go ahead and tell us who you are, what you do, and your connection to Flivver football.
My name is Rachael Johnson. I am the mom of 4 boys that attend Kingsford, all different ages. My oldest is Elliot, who will be a senior varsity football player. My next is Alistair, who is a junior, also a varsity football player. And then Noah Johnson, who's going to be a freshman next year. And then my youngest is 10. He's going to be 5th grade. So we'll at least be at 2 buildings next year, kind of one.
Right.
And we've traveled a lot because of the Air Force. So I've done a lot of part-time teaching jobs, and I'm currently still kind of doing the same thing. Just volunteer a lot, and I sub at the school whenever I'm able, and I enjoy working with all the kids of all the different ages. I really like it.
And for anybody who's been keeping up with the Kingsford Flivver Flash, we had Rachel's husband Eric on for season 20 episode 16 talking about youth football, and something I didn't even realize, but he was kind of the start of a string of veterans we had on. We had on Eric, and then we had Evan Phillips, who's a Blackhawk mechanic who graduated last year.
Oh, wow.
And then Jack Zimmerman, who's an infantryman with the Marines out in California. So Eric was kind of the start with our little tribute to veterans through the 4th of July holiday. So that was kind of neat. So let's go to you, Trish. I had the honor of coaching your son yesterday, and I know my son is like his #1 super fan. So tell us who you are and your connection to Flivver football.
I'm Tricia Meneguzzo, and Michael Meneguzzo is my son. I have 2 daughters that graduated. They're Kingsford alumni, one in 2017 and one in 2015, Molly and Abby. And Michael's our baby, and he'll be a junior this fall, first year of varsity football. So he's so pumped and so excited, as we are.
And I got to believe the excitement level is kind of hyped up by the fact that we're locked up in the house through the coronavirus pandemic. So, usually the spring is used for weightlifting and we start to get kids throwing and running, and nobody could do that. So I know we've seen them out there, and everybody seems pretty excited about just being active again.
I'm sure Rachael would agree. Speaking of the pandemic and how they were shut in, I can't imagine with 3 boys, but or 4 boys, right? 3 or 4, Rachael? You said 4, right?
4.
Oh my goodness. So that was what Michael clung on to, and his buddies, you could tell. It was, at first it was a lot of maybe Xbox that he doesn't usually play. And then that went away to working out. And it was almost like this, it got to be their obsession. Like my husband changed his woodworking room or whatever, the workshop, into with all weights and a bench and everything, and made a squat bench, whatever that is, for Michael. And And so it was really neat that that's what he clung on to, was the hope, because he was going to run track in the spring, but the hope that there would be a football season and getting in shape for it. So
Right. So let's start off. You guys have had your boys go through, non-pandemic and what we'd say a normal year is. So what does that preseason look like? Maybe we're done with all kind of summer sports and camps and stuff, and we're, just a few days out from starting two-a-days. So what does that look like when you have boys getting ready to play football?
I don't know. For us, I kind of feel like I'm their mom and football is kind of their job, and they love it. It's their favorite job, but I feel like it's my job to make sure they follow through with it, because we kind of emphasize with them that if they show up, they're helping their team. It's not just about them being there and whether or not they feel like it. It's about just building the team, and just their presence motivates others. It doesn't matter who it is. I think they all do that. And I mean, I'll say this for Tricia, we kind of had the same thing going on with the weight thing in our garage. Eric turned the garage into a weight room, and that was kind of what got them through. 3 o'clock every day, even though we had no schedule, was their lifting schedule. And just hearing that Michael was out doing that, Alistair was telling me what Michael was doing over at Pine Mountain. And I think them even just hearing that built the team, even though they weren't together, which is really cool. So it's important.
I agree.
That's preseason.
I think that was really important. The boys like communicating through social media or whatever, texting, showing what they were doing, because it motivated each other. Because I know he talked about you guys having that and going on at your house. And I think, but before football starts, we have very much the same mentality as what Rachel just said. I mean, our kids don't quit once they start. Those are just kind of our rules, and you're going to work really hard in the off season. You're going to show up for camps in the summer. You're going to show up in the weight room. And if you don't, then you shouldn't be part of that sport. And that's just the philosophy. And my husband really is more of a stickler about all of that. And then leadership is huge. Like the other day when lifting first started on Monday, Paul was having like this, Michael should be out the door by now. He was thinking it started at 7:30, and it started, his slot was 8 o'clock. And he's like, he needs to be there early. That's not showing leadership skills and all this. And it's like, poor Michael was like looking at me like, and then afterwards I'm like, Dad thought it started at 7:30 and you were just leaving the door at 7:30.
Right.
So, but I think that's just something we stress at home too with him. And hopefully it's been carried out now that he's getting older.
And something interesting you both mentioned was the team aspect of it. I think sometimes as boys and men, we get a little too focused on the individual aspect, the name on the back of the jersey, if you will. And as coaches, we're absolutely all about the team. But I remember being a player and whatnot. And it's interesting you bring that other perspective to kind of bring the team and the family part of it to your boys. And I think that's really, really important. So that's preseason. Let's talk about during a football game. I don't know who wants to go first. I know I had mentioned earlier, like my mom was the #1 super fan. She didn't really know what was happening, like in the details, but she was, the #1 cheerer for both teams and the whole 9 yards. So what is it like during a game watching your boy play football?
Well, for me, I remember hearing when I was in high school, moms of my friends that were guys being afraid they were going to get hurt. And I used to almost think like, oh my gosh, that's kind of weird, like to be worried so much about it. And until Michael started youth football and, then it just became more like, I totally get that. Like for a lot of the moms that I sit by at the games, we call it a success. Like it's a win, even if we were to lose, if nobody got hurt. But of course we love to win. But watching it's nervous, and Michael plays the quarterback position typically. And that's like, I love when he can just hand the ball off, even though he loves to pass and throw. I love it when like Toby just gets the ball or whoever it is. But I remember one example, I didn't even know Rachel, and I think the boys were freshmen. And Alistair was playing I don't even know positions, but a wide receiver, a receiver, because he caught the ball. And I remember giving you a high five because I don't know if he scored a touchdown. And I'm like, is that your son? And you're like, yeah. And I'm like, my son's the quarterback. He threw it. And we were high fiving. So I think as moms, we just are those crazy moms screaming, not really knowing the game, or at least that's me. But just cheering all the boys on. I love to see everybody out there and the way they all just like, they just are teammates to the end, you know, and family. So.
How about you, Rachel?
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of a weird thing. I never thought I'd be like this, but I get sick to my stomach the days of the kids' games with game nerves. And it's the weirdest thing. I could never have predicted that because I did a lot of sports too. And it reminds me of when I ran cross country. It was the same kind of feeling, but I get super nervous, especially when Alistair plays because he's a wild man. But I I get really nervous. But Eric does not like to sit by me because I get a little crazy. I try to be very polite, but he doesn't like the extra energy. He's a little more subdued. So he gets a little bit frustrated. But I don't know. As far as emotions go, it's just a weird feeling being a mom. And there was one game, too, where Tricia had Michael was trying to get a ball through. Alistair was hurt. I mean, you both were there. And he just kept playing and playing. And then at the end of the game, she came up to me and said, I didn't know what I should do, if I should say take the kid off the field or but then she said she was so happy because then the ball got through. You know, it's kind of like that mix of emotions most of the time for me. Like it's just crazy. It's a crazy game.
It is. And you both your families travel. Like it doesn't matter where we're playing. I think we saw you in Ashland. We saw you down at Lakeland College. You know, and granted, home games I think are easier on everybody, especially with work schedules and whatever. But what's it like going on the road? I think is it you, Rachel, that you bought a Winnebago for the trips?
A very, very old Winnebago, barely moving Winnebago. But yes, no, we actually wish we would have had it for those Menasha back-to-back games because we did have. It is hard because I still have a little guy, so I remember rushing to get Ben early from school. I didn't want him to have to miss his school, but I, grab him really fast, usually early for those games. And then I drove down with him, and I don't know who else was with me, maybe Noah. Got back at 1 a.m, and then the next day drove right back down and did it again.
Right. For those of you listening or watching, this past year we had our freshman and JV squads played at Menasha on Thursday, and then our varsity squad traveled there on Friday. So it was just one of those weird things where all the teams had to go to Menasha. I guess the nice part is it's not too far, and also they have a beautiful facility.
Yeah, they're wonderful there. I think they do a great job hosting too. They're very polite and kind. And
so we also have an RV that we travel, John, with.
Okay.
That's
I know there's like a big caravan leaving the parking lot.
So the story behind that is that when the boys, because there's a group of us that these are our baby boys, so the last of our family, and it's Becky and Jerome Larson and Cheryl and Mark Pugh and us, and I think I'm missing someone, but we have everybody. Oh, and cops sometimes jump in there too. Last year they couldn't as much, but Bosley's. But so we were joking when the boys were in 8th grade, and we're like, someone has to buy an RV so we can really make the most out of these last 4 years. And it was like getting towards August, and we get a text from Becky Larson with a picture of this old RV that Jerome went and bought. And so we try to take that to games, and we just have fun. And I think the boys love it, to see us all come together and cheering them on. So
absolutely.
There's 2 RVs out there following with the Johnsons and the Larsons.
Yeah, if ours makes it, it's getting kind of old.
I think Becky and Jerome would agree with their RV too. We're like, one more year, yeah.
I think it was when we went to Lakeland last year that we pulled in the parking lot and you guys were already there.
Yeah.
And you were, tailgating. I don't know if you had food cooking or whatever, but it was pretty neat. You pull up on the bus and to see the families supporting them. Especially when you go so far away, like you don't, it's hard to expect a family who has two parents working or working swing shift or whatever, and then to travel to the games is just really tough. So I know as a coach, I really appreciate that, and I know the boys do. That's really good stuff. So we've talked about before a game, we've talked about during. Let's talk about after, and let's start off with the bad one. Let's start with after a loss. What is it like, either on the car ride home or when your player gets home after a loss, or even the next day? What is that like?
Well, I think I try to just be that positive, like, it's okay, bud, or whatever, but he doesn't want to talk much. He takes that all because that, probably his position more or whatever. And I remember, I think it was the Lakeland, or when we went.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Michael had a rough game that day, and I knew he wasn't feeling well. So Paul would say, you're making excuses for him. And I was just like, well, he's sick and he's out there and it's hot. And I just remember after the game, but my husband, he's lucky because he doesn't have a dad that ever totally nitpicks everything. He waits for a while and then he'll be like, gotta kind of do this more, better. This is what we saw or whatever. And then with that film that you guys have ready right away available, they usually go in the den and they shut the door and they watch the game again. And so I'm kind of just the cheerleader out there, like, it's okay, it'll be better next game, that sort of thing. So
yeah. How about you, Rachel?
I think I've learned that I need to just be quiet and just kind of listen and let them. They need a little just sulking, and thinking and reflecting. And I like to be in your face and just kind of be like, oh, this was really great. And they don't really want to hear that at that point. But
Right.
I think one thing we've learned too is there's a lot of stuff that happens at one time on, in any given play. And sometimes I'll see the kids get yelled at for something, and the mom in me does not like that. But, Eric totally, Rachel, this is how boys learn. This is what, like, the mom in you feels like, oh, like they were trying, but, it's totally different. But I think it's neat to let them figure it out. And a lot of times if they just handle it well, coaches go back and look at the film and maybe it was not a correct, reprimand. The coaches are great about apologizing, or vice versa, or my kid looks at the film and sees what they did wrong, so the film is really helpful.
mm-hmm.
And because it goes both ways. It's just a lot of stuff happening at one time. So I don't know, I think just being a listening ear and, I always tell, Alistair gets really frustrated with me because I'm always trying to pep him up and he's like, Mom, I don't need a pep talk. I'm fine. He gets real mad at me about that. But I think just listening and letting them be mad for a little while.
Yeah. Well, and you both mentioned the film. One thing I always say about the film is it turns an argument into a conversation.
Right.
Because if I see a player who took a step with the wrong foot and that's why they didn't get the block and that's why somebody got tackled, I'm going to say, you need to step with the correct foot. And instead of saying, Coach, I did, and say,
right.
no, you didn't. And now instead of that argument, I can show them on the film. And it's come so far, even just since I've been coaching. Like when we're at practice, I can pull it up on my phone, film a play, and then show the player 10 seconds after the play ended. Like,
Yeah.
See what I mean? If you step with this foot, and then, the correction and the learning, and it takes those arguments away and turns them into conversations about, well, how do we get you to step with that correct foot? Maybe we need to shift your weight or put more weight on your hand or whatever it is. So interesting. You both brought that up. So let's talk about the good stuff. After a win, I look at my favorite win last year was Escanaba. I'm sorry, Escanaba was a good one, but Marquette. We're at home. It was the last game. Both of us were undefeated in the GNC. It was Coach Murdoch's last game, before he retired. And I mean, it was great. It was 20-20 in the fourth quarter, and we had that last drive. That was my favorite, but I'm sure you have your favorite. What happens after a win at home?
I think everybody's just happy, as the moms were hugging and we're happy. And that game to me was just an exceptional, just all around. Like we were playing Marquette. Yeah, we were going for that title, and the game was not, it was so hard fought, and all the boys were getting hurt. And to see them, like Michael helping up his linemen, like just stay in there for a couple more plays and protect me, you know, and like all of them were like carrying each other off the field at points because they were getting hurt, but they all just like, not that you want hurt kids playing, but it was just like that whole, like they just grew as a team. And it was that like just family mentality that you could just see as a spectator watching that, not just as a mom. I think everybody felt that. And then to beat Marquette is huge because like in every sport in that grade level, basketball, they're just really competitive. So it was just a really fun win, I think, all around. And to end it with Mr. Murdoch, Coach Murdoch's last, you know, hurrah as a coach. My girls had him for softball. So we, you know, have a lot of respect for him. So it was just fun to see you guys as coaches hugging the players as they're coming off, and just everybody just coming together for that win. That was just really special for us too. And a bunch of the boys came over, and it was a school night, and they took a hot tub at our house. And I said, you guys are GNC champs, so you can do this on a school night. You know, it was just, it was fun.
How about you, Rach, after a big win?
The same, you know, the same thing. It's like the nerves are relieved, and it's like all those emotions are just crazy. That was my favorite game also. It was just a neat game. I think I was in tears by the end of the game because I was so proud of the kids. And it wasn't just, you know, it was so many players that just kind of went in and just played their hearts out. And you're right, there was so many injured kids. It was ridiculous. They were dropping like flies.
Yeah.
So it was a great game. And I don't know, it's just fun to celebrate. And I think for me, a game like that for us, we took it home, and, you know, as parents, we were like, should we have let him play? Should we have pulled him out? You know, like you're like, oh. But I feel like, you know, we were lucky because Eric looked at him and he could say if it was something that would be long-term, you know, something that would be bad. But I was thinking, I just want the kids to know that when you think that you don't have anything left, you have so much more to give. In a game, there's always more. And I just, you know, like this is where the competitive comes out. You want them to fight for it and want it. And that game was all about that. And it was beautiful. And I just wish that I could see that same drive in every game for all of the levels. But I think that's by far my favorite game of all the games I've ever watched. There was one more in Menasha that was really awesome. We didn't win it, but it was Elliot's team a couple years ago. I just felt like they fought so hard and they looked so good. They did not win, but their effort was exceptional, I thought, you know, especially first game of the season. But
and that's a tough place to go for your first game because they have so many everything. I remember I was in the booth for the varsity game, and I'm watching the scout defense work against their, you know, starting offense, and then I'm seeing their scout offense working against their scout defense, and they have a bunch of people over there doing snaps and punts and whatever. You know, 11 jog off on offense and sit down in front of the TVs and watch the last series, and then they jog on in the other. It's like a well-oiled machine, and that's not to make any excuses, but they have so many kids and so many more resources. It's right. That was tough. And I think I know the game that you're talking about, and to go in there, and that's for Wisconsin, that's week 2. So they already have a scrimmage under the belt. They already have a game, and we're going in, you know, with all the first game jitters and whatnot. So very good. So last question, and this is kind of goes with the title of the podcast, which is, "Hey Mom, where's my jersey?" And I just want to hear a funny story. It can be about, you know, socks you found 3 months later, or it can be about the 7 peanut butter sandwiches they ate, you know, after the first practice or whatever. Just some kind of funny story, maybe a little embarrassing for your boys, which would be okay.
Well, they'll love that.
I'll let Rachel go.
I'm thinking. I don't know about embarrassing stories. I think there's a lot of funny stories. You know, there's a lot of funny Murdoch stories. He was a great coach. Many great coaches. I think one of my fondest memories, it's not really a funny, embarrassing memory, but one of my fondest memories was, it was like after a really hot practice, 2-a-days, and they're like a whole crew of them came flying in over here. I don't know, there must have been like 21 of them of the team came flying over. And I just remember thinking it was the lunch hour for my neighbor. And my neighbor came home and just saw these boys. He used to be a wrestler, I think, years ago for Kingsford. And he took his lunch hour and took all the kids around the lake on his boat. And the
nice.
kids played like King of the Raft, whipping each other off. And I just remember thinking, I hope that someone on the team doesn't get hurt at my house. And my only goal is to get all these kids home safe. But they fished, they just were crazy, ate a ton of food. Like I made so much taco meat, I thought there's no way they could possibly eat this. And it was gone. There wasn't anything left. And I think that's how, you know, like the house was full, hearts were full, and just watching that team laugh and have fun, you know, it was just very, very awesome, joyful memory for us, and hope to have many more.
And you know, we always talk about the team, and a lot of times the only team that the fans see is the one on the field for that 2 hours, but they don't see all the shenanigans that happen in the locker room. They don't see all of the stuff that happens in the weight room. They don't see the going for a boat ride. I know my senior year, Coach Hofer had us out to his house on Bass Lake, and we ended up flipping the swimming raft, you know, and that was one of those things where, I mean, it comes over hard on a bunch of players, and you know, that was kind of the end of swimming then. But they don't see all of that, because it's really, you spend so much time together that's not on the field, and that's really where the teams are made. You guys both mentioned it with the weight room stuff, like working out, and even though they couldn't work out together, talking with each other. Hey, I did this on the bench. Hey, we figured out how to do, you know, whatever. We figured out how to do squats with our lawnmower or whatever. So that's such an important part of football that so many people just don't see at all. So, all right, Tricia, you got funny story, gym socks, where's my jersey, something?
Well, I have a lot of that, but Michael doesn't ever have to look for his jersey, because what I told you before we started this is that I get teased for how much, and he gets teased for how much he's prepared, because his mom packs his, you know, I make sure with him being my last one at home, I'm able to do that, where his sisters just shake their head and they're like, oh my gosh, like you lay out the color of his, but the story that Rachel was alluding to before we got on air was that it was basketball, and I think it was 8th grade or something, and and I had left out the jersey, and I told him to grab something, and he grabbed the pile, but the jersey was somewhere else. And it was like ultimately my fault, because, you know, but his dad was blaming, you know, I'm so mad at him, and he couldn't start the game. And it was the first game he didn't start because of me. I had to run back from Florida. Lucky it was just in Niagara, I think. And I had to drive back to Kingsford, grab the jersey, and Paul's tracking me on our Life 360. Where are you? The game's about to start. So after that, Michael does double check me, you know. So for football, it's just those darn cleats just smell up you can't, like, it smells, so we have to keep them out in the garage, you know. So
especially if you get a rain practice, and they get nice and wet.
It's more than this, it's the more the stinky cleats that yeah,
if you could only smell our cars over YouTube, that would say it all.
Well, we try and we tell the players, you know, take your stuff home and wash it. Mm-hmm. But then we see some of it ends up in the back seat of their car for a little bit longer than it should. But so, well, this year, Tricia, you have a junior playing on the varsity, and Rachel, you have a senior, a junior, and a freshman. Mm-hmm. So you guys will be tearing up the road, and I know we'll hear you in the stands, and we're really excited. And I want to say thank you so much for coming on today. This has really been awesome.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
And that will do it for season 20, episode 19 of the Kingsford Flipper Flash. Hey Ma, where's my jersey? With Tricia Meneguzzo and Rachel Johnson. Again, a big thank you to those two ladies for supporting their boys in the great game of football. If you haven't already, please go down in the show notes. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We're also on YouTube. If you're watching right now, please give us a thumbs up and share this video. If you're on your podcatcher of choice listening just with audio, please give us a 5-star review and hit like. You can find us on all of your favorite podcasting apps. And until next time, I'm Coach Van Dusen. Invest in tomorrow by owning today.